The Amazon, Brazil, 1930. A man named Raimundo Iranu Serra goes alone into the forest. He is a rubber tapper, the son of African slaves, a giant of a man, nearly 2 meters tall, who has been living and working in the Amazon for years. He's been introduced to a medicine that the indigenous people of the region have been using in ceremony for longer than any written record exists. He goes into the forest alone with the medicine. He stays for 8 days. What happens in those 8 days he describes as a meeting. Not a vision, not a hallucination, a meeting with a being he calls the Queen of the Forest, a figure of extraordinary luminosity and compassion who teaches him, who gives him hymns, who gives him a new understanding of the relationship between the indigenous wisdom of the Amazon, the Catholic Christian tradition his ancestors carried across the ocean in chains, and something that underlies both. Something that neither tradition had a name for, but that both had always been pointing towards. He comes out of the forest with a religion. Santo Daime, the holy give me. Give me love, give me light, give me strength. It's still alive today, growing and spreading. Recognized as a legitimate religion with full legal protection in Brazil and increasingly around the world. Its sacrament is ayahuasca, the brew of the vine and the leaf that the Amazon has been working with in sacred ceremony for centuries beyond counting. I have sat in the work with this medicine, and I want to tell you something that most people in this conversation never say. It didn't change me. Not one bit. Welcome back to Quantum Awareness. Sound is emptiness, emptiness is sound. I'm QP, your quantum perceptor. Now, before we begin, if this episode opens something, please hit subscribe so the next one finds you. If you've been with us through the last 4 episodes, you already know the territory we're in. And if this is your first time, hey, welcome. No prior knowledge is needed. Just an open mind and perhaps a quiet room. Let me start with the chemistry before the ceremony, because the chemistry of ayahuasca is itself extraordinary, and understanding it makes everything that follows a little bit more precise. Ayahuasca is the brew made from 2 plants, the vine, Banisteriopsis cape, and the leaf, Psychotria viridis, also known as karuna. Neither plant produces the full effect on its own. The karuna leaf contains DMT, dimethyltryptamine, a powerful psychedelic compound. But DMT is broken down almost immediately by the enzymes in your stomach, the monoamine oxidase, before it can even reach the brain. Taken alone, orally, it produces almost nothing. The vine contains harmala alkaloids. These are natural monoamine oxidase inhibitors. They block the enzymes that would break down the DMT. Suddenly, the DMT reaches the brain. Suddenly, the valve opens. For this specific combination to have been just discovered out of 40,000 plant species in the Amazon basin, the indigenous people of Amazon had to know, through a process of investigation that would have taken generations, that these 2 specific plants needed to be combined. When Western scientists asked the Amazonian shamans how they discovered this specific combination, the shamans gave a consistent answer. The plants told us. This answer has been dismissed. It's been noted with curiosity and increasingly taken seriously, because the alternative, that this specific combination was discovered by accident or by trial and error from a pool of 40,000 species, well, that's statistically almost impossible. Something was guiding the investigation, and in Tibetan terms, if every sentient being has the Buddha nature, every sentient being is capable of awareness. Therefore, the forest may know more than we have been prepared to hear. In the early 1990s, a psychiatrist named Rick Strassman at the University of New Mexico received the first regulatory approval in 20 years to conduct research with a psychedelic compound in the United States. The compound was DMT. Strassman administered intravenous DMT to 60 volunteers in a carefully controlled clinical setting. The sessions were brief. The effects of intravenous DMT last approximately 15 minutes. But what his subjects reported was consistent, structured, and profoundly strange. They reported encounters with entities, beings, not aliens, intelligences that seemed independent, purposeful, and communicative, not hallucinations that felt like projections of the subject's own mind, but presences that felt genuinely other, that offered information the subject had not anticipated, that seemed to know things. Strassman called DMT the spirit molecule. His book of the same name is the most important scientific account of DMT's effects ever written. He's also proposed a hypothesis that remains unproven, but deeply interesting, that the pineal gland produces endogenous DMT, that the body manufactures its own version of the molecule that ayahuasca delivers from the outside, that the experiences of deep meditation, of the threshold of sleep, of the moment of death, may involve the natural release of endogenous DMT, the valve opening from the inside. Now, the Tibetan tradition describes the dissolution sequence at death, the progressive withdrawal of awareness, the arising of visions, the recognizing of the clear light. We've covered this in the last episodes. Please go back and listen. Strassman's hypothesis suggested a neurochemical mechanism for exactly this sequence. The molecule the Amazon has been working with ceremonially for centuries may be the same molecule the body produces at its most extreme thresholds. The forest may have known this long before the laboratory did. But here's what matters for this episode. If the body can produce this molecule naturally, in deep meditation, at death, in the most profound moments of contemplative practice, then the question's not whether the molecule works. The question is whether the molecule's necessary. And the answer that Dharma gives us is the same consistent answer that it's always given. It depends entirely on what we're trying to build. So, many years ago, I sat in a Santo Daime ceremony in Amsterdam. At the time, the church's use of ayahuasca enjoyed legal protection in the Netherlands as a recognized religious sacrament. I want to tell you what the container felt like from the inside. In Santo Daime, the ceremony is called the work, o trabalho. The word's deliberate. It's not a party. It's not a retreat. It's work. Sacred, intentional, communal work. And the work was extraordinarily well organized. Before anything began, several experienced women from the community held a question and answer session with those of us who were new. Every question was met with patience and care. And one answer in particular has stayed with me. Someone asked how the medicine compares to other substances they might have heard of. The woman smiled and answered, "It has no comparison that we know of." After the questions, we were personally directed to our seats by the lead woman of the ceremony. In the center of the space was an altar. Around it, concentric rings of seating. Women on one side, men on the other. The symmetry was deliberate. It was a mandala. The space had been arranged with the precision of a liturgy that knew exactly what it was doing. The music started. Hymns, sung in Portuguese, the icaros of the Santo Daime tradition, not improvised, not performed, but transmitted, handed down, earned. And we sat with the music for a long time, and I gotta be honest with you, I was so bored. I sat there, just bored out of my mind, and I thought, well, I should use my time in a better way. So I began to meditate, which is, as it turned out, was exactly the right preparation for everything that followed. This was Matrix 1, the oceanic state, the womb before anything happens. Warm, undifferentiated, the ordinary world still intact. The music holding the space. Nothing breaking open yet, just waiting. Then, just as in church, We were called to the front for the first time. A man and a woman stood at the altar. They poured small shot glasses of a thick brown syrup, the color of dark molasses. We received it. We drank. We returned to our seats. Then the music started again. Another long round. I returned to the meditation. Still in the warmth. Still held. Still Matrix 1. The ceremony doing its quiet work before anything moves. When we were called to the front a second time, they looked me sternly in the eyes. More? They asked. Another shot glass, the same thick brown syrup. We received it. We drank. We returned to our seats. Then a woman came around with a plate. Not the offering plate you're used to from church, but a plate with baseball bat sized joints. Pure, perfectly rolled. She carried a lighter. Have a few puffs and pass it on. And then I sank into a deep, dark hole. Warm. Not frightened, but deep. Like being suspended in the thick brown fluid I had just swallowed. The music was still playing, but it was far above me now, very far above me. Like hearing music from the surface of the ocean when you're deep below it. Matrix 2, Groff's constriction, the no exit state. The universe as a container with no way through and no way back. Warm and dark, going deeper. And then, just like a rocket, I was off. Matrix 3, the breakthrough. The titanic struggle giving way. Out of the thick fluid, the cervix opening. The battle that cannot be avoided and cannot be lost. Flying through the most sunny and blue sky I have ever seen. And when I say me, I mean my mind. There was no body, just the real me. Just awareness. Flying. Matrix 4, the emergence. The old self dissolved. A new relationship with existence, beginning. Light, space, the first breath. There were waves of flying with short breaks, opening my eyes to the congregation around me. They were all there, all present, all somewhere in the same territory, each in their own way. Hands in the air, bodies slowly moving in the music. There was a woman off to one side. She was either having a very good time or the medicine had become too strong and too fast for her. Oh God, oh God, oh God, she said over and over and over. Before I could even finish the thought, one of the experienced practitioners was already there, already beside her, already guiding her gently to a safe space where she could lie down. We were really cared for. That's what gets lost when the molecule leaves the ceremony. The flight slowly landed in a song. Hands in the air, bodies swaying. The music guiding us back. I grew up in a Pentecostal church in Western Canada, and I had seen people with hands in the air, bodies slowly waving, the music carrying them somewhere. I knew what it looked like. This was more real and more honest than anything I have ever seen in church. Then there was tea and snacks afterwards. We all chatted. It was abundantly clear that what I had received was a sacrament, like taking communion, just not wine and crackers. Now, I want to tell you the other part of the story that most people in the conversation leave out. The next day, I woke up, I was the same person. No hangover, no negative side effects. As innocuous as a Sunday sermon. The container had been everything I could have asked for. The preparation, the care, the experienced practitioners, the woman who was already moving towards the person who needed help before anyone had to ask. The work was done properly, and I was not enlightened. I was not even a better person because of the experience. Now, maybe if I had understood the songs, if the language had been mine, if the tradition had been mine, if years of practice had prepared the ground, something might have taken root. But it didn't. I think this molecule leads nowhere. Not because the experience wasn't real. It most certainly was. I was flying through the most blue sky I had ever seen, and there was no body, and it was extraordinary. But extraordinary is not transformative. Visiting a country is not living there. I want to tell you one more story. A friend of mine, a practitioner, someone on the path, had an experience with ketamine, horse tranquilizers, and he was convinced, completely, genuinely convinced that he had been enlightened. He came to me full of it. He told me everything he'd seen and experienced. He wanted me to try. I said, no way. But I suggested something better. I said, ask your Lama. He agreed. He went to his Lama and described the experience. He asked whether what he had encountered was enlightenment. The Lama looked at him and said, once enlightened, always enlightened. Do you feel enlightened now? My friend said no. The Lama replied, well then, you have your answer. 4 words. No lecture, no doctrine, no philosophical apparatus. Just a question that the student answered himself. That's the teaching. That's the whole teaching. Now, here's what I've come to understand. The molecule can give you the experience of every single paramita, the feeling of boundless generosity, dhyana, the vision of perfect ethical clarity, sila, the state of absolute patience in which nothing disturbs you, kasani, the effortless joy of joyful effort, virya, the stillness of deep meditation, dhyana, and the direct seeing of the nature of mind itself, prajna. But you see, the paramitas are not experiences. They are qualities of being that are built through practice, through the sustained, unglamorous, daily work of choosing the wider response over the reactive one. In relationship with other people, in the world, not when you are high. The molecule cannot be generous for you. It cannot be patient with your difficult colleague. It cannot choose the ethical response when the reactive response is easier. It cannot show up for someone who needs you on a Wednesday morning. Because the paramitas require others. They are built in the friction and in the beauty of being alive in a body with other people. And the world, the ordinary, difficult, beautiful, demanding world, is exactly where the molecule cannot follow. And this is why the experience left me unchanged. Not because the experience wasn't real, but because the 6 paramitas are not experiences. They are the expression of bodhicitta, the awakened heart mind that orients towards the liberation of all beings. In action, in the world, in relationship, every day. The molecule can show you the fruit, but only practice grows the whole tree. I sat in the work in Amsterdam and I flew, and then I came home. And then there was still a colleague I found difficult, and a moment when the reactive response was not just easier, it was more fun. And a Wednesday morning when someone needed me, I didn't feel like showing up. The parameters were exactly waiting for me where I had left them. That's not the failure of the medicine. It's the nature of the path. When Raimundo Irno Serra, built from those 8 days in the forest, is one of the most extraordinary religious syntheses of the modern world. Santo Daime holds the medicine inside a framework of Catholic hymns, of African spiritual traditions, of indigenous Amazonian knowledge. The ceremonies, the work, involve white clothing, candles, music, the icaros sung by the whole community together, and the daime, the sacrament, the ayahuasca, received collectively at a specific moment as communion. That's not casual. This is not recreational. This is a living religion with a lineage, a community, a set of ethical commitments, and a sacramental practice refined over nearly a century. In 2006, a case reached the Supreme Court of the United States. Gonzalez versus UDV. The Univo de Vegetal, another Brazilian ayahuasca church. The DEA had raided their church and seized their sacrament. The UDV sued under the Religious Freedoms Restoration Act. The Supreme Court ruled unanimously in their favor, 9-0. Even the Republicans voted to protect the sacrament. That's amazing. The container, the religion, the lineage, the ceremony, the community was recognized even by the highest court in the land as the thing that made the difference between sacrament and substance. The law understood what the Dharma has always known. The medicine and the container are not separable. This is what gets lost when the molecule leaves the ceremony and hits the streets. Before we close, I need to say something clearly. The medicine we've been discussing did not originate in a laboratory. It did not originate in a Brazilian religion. It did not originate in the research programs of Western universities. It originated in the Amazon, in the knowledge systems of indigenous people who have been living in relationship with this medicine for longer than any written record exists, who developed the specific combination of vine and leaf from 40,000 possible species through a process of investigation that Western science still cannot fully explain. The Amazonian traditions are not a delivery mechanism for compounds that Western science then validates. They are complete systems of understanding consciousness, healing, and the relationship between human beings and the living world. They deserve to be named, credited, approached with the humility of someone who was receiving something they did not create. The icaros are not background music. They are technology refined over generations by people who understood exactly what they were doing. The ceremony is a setting. It's the medicine. The lineage is not a formality. It's the container without which everything dissolves. It's what gets lost when the molecule leaves the ceremony and hits the streets. So here's where we land. A vine and a leaf, 2 plants out of 40,000. A living religion built in the Amazon that won a unanimous Supreme Court decision on religious freedoms. A body of science showing rapid antidepressant effects and lasting well-being for those who practice consistently within the container. And one practitioner from Western Canada who sat in a work in Amsterdam and flew through the most beautiful blue sky he had ever seen, and came home unchanged. Now let me come down from this pulpit and tell you exactly what I really think. The work in Amsterdam was a religious party, a beautiful one, a safe one, a well-organized and genuinely loving one. I mean no disrespect to Santo Daime at all. The tradition is real, the container is honorable. The people who held the space were extraordinary. But for me, it was a party. One evening, one experience, one window. And anyone can have a good time with a molecule. The real work is something else entirely. The real work is being a bodhisattva to someone who hates your guts. But you do it anyways. Because you promised your lama. Because the path asked. Because the person in front of you needs it even when you don't feel like giving it. The real work is showing up week after week in your sangha, meditating, keeping your center or your temple clean. The real work is planting more flowers in the garden of your mind where there once was only weeds. The technology of compassion has no shortcuts, no easy way out, no party all the time. Heck, sometimes the party is never. The real change in your life is worth every bit of generosity, meaningful behavior, joyful effort, patience, and meditation. The wisdom and merit one finds is more than a party, and it lasts lifetimes. Next time we leave the Amazon, we leave the laboratory, we leave the ceremony and the molecule and the vine and the leaf behind. And we climb a mountain. Well, 4 mountains actually. Sinai, the Mount of Beatitudes, the Cave of Hira, and a tree in Bodh Gaya that wasn't a mountain, but might as well have been. 4 men, 4 moments of direct encounter with the ground of being. 3 world religions and the oldest contemplative technology in human history. All born from what happened when 4 people opened the valve without any molecule at all. Well, maybe not. We'll see. That I promise. Were they pointing at the same thing? We're going to find out. The molecule opens the window. Practice plants the garden. You grow it yourself. On your own will. If this episode landed for you, share it with some person who needs to hear that the real work begins after the party ends. Subscribe wherever you listen. The next episode takes us somewhere no one expected. This is QP. Sound is emptiness. Emptiness is sound. Catch you next time.